All righty, thank you very much. Morning, everyone that's here at the county building, maybe watching online or viewing the tape afterwards. This is our regular BOCC meeting for February 8th, 2023. Before we call the roll, I'd like to introduce Pastor John Smith to provide an invocation and lead us in the pledge. John? Thank you, John. All righty. With that, the time is now 9:03. Amanda, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Richardson?
Here.
Commissioner Thayer?
Here.
Commissioner Schroeder?
Here.
All right, first item up we have is approval of the agenda. I'd accept a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda with one little amendment, and that is to move item 6 in the action items up to the first one to accommodate the auditor. I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda with the reordering of the action items. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. So the first item of business we have is approval of the items on consent. I would accept a motion to approve the consent items.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the items on consent. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to elected officials, department head, staff reports. Do we have anything from the elected officials today? Okay, thank you. Seeing none. Staff reports. I don't think we had anything teed up that's not on discussion. So I'd just like to take a moment to introduce Sean Fletcher to the crowd. He joined us on the 30th of January in the position of county manager. So this is his first BOCC meeting, but certainly not his last. Sean, would you like to say anything? Or?
Just a pleasure to join you all today and look forward to working with you all.
Thank you. And again, welcome. All righty. So with that, Amanda, did we have anybody that wanted to be called for public comment?
No, we didn't get.
Okay, and no email comment?
emails.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go to the room. Do we have anybody in the room that would like to make public comment at this time? We'll have opportunity on the discussion and action items for further comment. Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment and move on to our discussion items. The first item we have is an update from Representative Buck's office from Darlene Carpeo. Darlene, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Y'all know how to fly right from A to G on your agenda, don't you? So first of all, just as an introduction, since I'm fairly new to your county, I've been on Congressman Buck's staff starting now my third year doing outreach and constituent services in the Northeast area of District 4. I served on Senator Cory Gardner's staff for 4 years. So Elbert County actually was just added to my region in October as we are meeting the needs of a redistricting. District 4 changed a little bit, and so we have too. So trying to make sure that we're available for constituents throughout the district. And I've got to tell you, I'm from Yuma, so I'm a rural gal, live a little ways from here, but it has been really meaningful and honestly just fun to get to meet folks in Elbert County. So some of the things that I've been able to, the folks that I've been able to meet and outreach to accomplish. First, I want to thank Mark back here, who committed a big chunk of one of his days to make sure that I was familiar with your county, gave me a nice tour. We went into every incorporated and unincorporated community within the county. So thanks for your time and the miles, Mark. Also have gotten to meet your veteran service officer. We want to make sure that we're supporting them in the work that they do. And you got a good one here. He's been around for a while and he knows what he's doing. I can learn from him. Also have been working with Elizabeth City Manager Patrick to address the USPS issues going on in that community. Glad to say that I think we've made some pretty significant headway. So we'll stay in touch in that conversation and hope we can celebrate full mail delivery this summer. So we'll stay engaged in that. Looking into some of the security issues that they're dealing with at the Agate School. It's kind of astonishing as the limited resources that they've had and trying to steer some things their way. So truly, if there's other things that I need to know or leaders that I need to be engaged with, send me that information, and I would look forward to doing that as I return. So a few things about the congressman. I'm always thrilled to death that I'm here, and he's in DC, but we do need to know what's going on back there. He had a comment to make after his re-election in November that I still think is worth sharing because it gives his priorities of what he's working on in the 118th Congress. He said, "I will continue to work for all hard-working Coloradoans and focus my legislative efforts on spending, border security, crime, expanding American energy, and reining in big tech." So those are also his directives for those of us working in the district. By all means, we cover everything that we need to know, but those are definitely his priority items as he goes into this new legislative session. You are likely to hear now for probably about the next 6 months conversations around the debt limit. So Congress will have to make the decision on what to do with that, whether they're going to raise that limit by June. The statement that the congressman shared on that topic, he said, what people want is simple. We need to make sure we're not spending more money than we take in. He says, Buck says that the Democrats are hyping the fear factor. Obviously, I don't want to be irresponsible and let the country default, but I think the threat of default is overstated and people need to negotiate in good faith and make sure we get spending under control. This is our opportunity to do that. So again, he's quite the fiscal conservative. Getting a balanced budget will be a priority for him, and that will be a focus. I don't know if you get the congressman's newsletter. It goes out every other Friday. If you don't, I might want to send you that link. But last Friday, he kind of summarized some of the things that the now Republican-controlled House has been working on these first few weeks of Congress. He said, we have voted to end the Biden administration's emergency pandemic powers. We've ended COVID-era telework for thousands of federal employees who are still working from home. We have blocked oil from our country's emergency stockpile from going into China. He said the Judiciary Committee, which he sits on, met this week and held a hearing on failures on our southern border, the lack of border security and removal of some of the Trump-era policies has created an alarming humanitarian and security crisis for our country. We also continue our fight against big tech. So those are some of the priority things that have happened in the House in the last few weeks. One other thing that I want to mention, you may be aware that at the end of the last Congress, Congressman Buck, along with Senator Hawley, were able to get past the No TikTok on United States Devices Act. He feels that this is hugely threatening to America, as that is a Chinese-owned platform, and so much of our personal data is going directly to them. He and Senator Hawley have once again introduced legislation now to take that off of all devices in our country. So his fight against big tech certainly continues. Want to make you aware maybe of an opportunity. I'm going to be hosting the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority new Eastern Plains Director in Fort Morgan on March the 8th from 1 to 3rd. So it's just a meet and greet, but this is a new position they created. While they deal much around housing, they have some new programs around grants for nonprofits, grants for technical assistance. If you have a small staff and you'd need somebody to write that grant, this is dollars that can help you with that. So I think these are resources we want to bring out to the Plains. If there's ever a federal agency that you would like to be in touch with, we're glad to offer a resource fair and get those folks out here where we can actually spend some time with them. A couple of other places I've spent my time is at Colorado Water Congress Conference a couple weeks ago and Rural Voices Conference a week ago. So good conversations, and I'm glad to be engaged in there. So enough from me. How do we need to support what's going on in Elbert County?
I just appreciate your comments on Rick Morgan. He is kind of a local treasure here, but in a time when very few people do serve in the military, about 10% of our population is veteran.
Absolutely.
So he does make a big difference for those folks. And the Agate School, I wasn't aware that you were working with them, but I'm glad you are, because they've probably in the last 6 years moved from 6 or 7 students in the district and looking at closing to, closer to 50 or 60 to 70, and a lot of changes in leadership during that time frame. So just there's no muscle memory there on how to run a bigger district than they.
Well, rural education is it's a common conversation, but we need to get those resources out where they can make a difference. And I think just facilitating, connecting the proper folks and the proper agencies can make a difference. So we'll keep making those introductions.
And then the other in that same area, Agate is an unincorporated town, has a privately held water supplier that struggles, and again has changed hands several times. There's only about 46 customers. The system is aging. We got a state grant to do a project needs assessment, but now we're kind of staring at the results of that, and it's certainly potentially in the couple of $1 million range, and 46 folks aren't going to be able to.
We're going to need some funding
to pay that one off.
Yeah.
So
Well, I hope that they're
looking at grant dollars at some point.
engaging with DOLA
Yeah.
and USDA Rural Development on some of those, but
Yeah,
if they need
that's
those
the direction we're going.
contacts.
We have DOLA coming in tomorrow to
Good.
discuss some of that with Mark and others. So we're going to see if we can help guide them towards establishing themselves as a district so they're eligible for grant funding versus
You bet.
just loans.
And keep in mind that quite often our office, being a federal agency, can't always engage well with the state. However, letters of support go a long way. Don't hesitate to request those, and we're glad to provide what support we can.
Okay, well, thank you.
You bet. Well, thank you for your time today.
I appreciate you coming out.
You bet.
Alrighty, the next item we have is the annual report from the Pines and Plains Library District, and a welcome, I guess, to the new director.
Hi,
Susan,
good
welcome.
morning. I am Susan Byrne, and I'm the new director of the Pines and Plains Libraries. And just to give you a little bit of background about who I am, I grew up in Kansas, and I've had worn several different hats through my lifetime. I've worked in the pharmaceutical industry, I've worked in retail, and I've been in libraries for over 20 years on and off. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk with you about what's going on in the libraries. So I'm going to give you our annual report first, just give you a little bit of teeny tiny bit of statistical information about what's going on with the libraries after that. So I don't know if y'all don't have the report handy. I've got copies here if it would be helpful. You got it there? Okay. All righty. Awesome. So we continue along the same lines that we've been doing. So our revenues in property tax, we had nearly 1.3 million. Specific ownership tax was 169,000. So our total revenues were about 1.4 million. And these revenues came in well over what we had expected as far as the budget. I divided our expenses a little bit differently this year than what you've seen in the past. I tried to make it a little bit more intuitive, hopefully. So our personnel expenses are the first line there at 548,000. Materials and supplies, so that includes all of our books and anything related to, well, books and DVDs and that kind of thing, and then anything related to processing those. And actually, our books are a capitalized asset, so we just had our on-site auditor last week, so we learned that over 5 years, our books are capitalized, so that's kind of interesting. So that was 89,000. Programming is about 86,000, and then just the general operations of the library, 169,000. So again, we came in considerably under what we had budgeted. So we only spent about 83% of our budget and added a whole bunch more to reserves. So at the end of the year, our total reserves are $1,056,913, and we had that was at the end of the year for 2021. The end of the year for 2022, we had $1,662,816. So we are holding those reserves in interest-bearing accounts, and we're actually going to get started going this year. So that's really, I know you all have been watching that money, but we are really going to get going this year. So the first thing we're going to start with is a needs analysis, and just looking at the county as a whole, looking at where our population centers are and where we're serving those populations, and just, taking everything into account. So that's going to be the first step this year. So if we can move quickly enough, then once we have our needs assessment analysis, then we'll be moving forward from that point. So just to share a few kind of, so I'm in the midst, since I'm brand new, I just started the 1st of December, so I'm just learning everything. And we have our annual statistical report coming up soon, so I just have done a little bit of work on that in anticipation of submitting that report. So just overall, in terms of circulation, so this is just the books and the physical things in the library. We also have a very large online presence now where you can download ebooks and audiobooks and videos and that kind of thing. But just for our physical items, we saw a 10% increase in our circulation from 2021 to 2022. And just in adding new patrons from one year to the next, we've added the new patrons from 2021 to 2022, we've increased that number by 15%. So I'm hoping that next year I'll be able to give you a lot larger numbers than that. But that's kind of where we are today. And I'm just really pleased to be here and talk with you today. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you.
I just have a couple, since
Sure.
I'm new as well, and not familiar with this. We've seen across the nation some controversies in libraries with certain shows that have been put on. Does the library have a specific policy on shows like that, or a case-by-case basis? Just curious about that.
Yes, we absolutely have a policy in place for that. If we had someone bring to us what we call a request for reconsideration, so that could be an item, like a physical item in the library, or it could be a program that we put on. So it could be any number. It could be even a use of the meeting room. So we have a policy that we follow in those situations. So absolutely we do. And we're actually looking at beefing up those policies as well.
Okay. So if we've seen across the nation a drag show came forward, that would be something you guys would...
Absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely...
Okay, good. Along those same lines, there's also been a lot in the news about books for minors that kind of cross the line as well. How do you all go about selecting what books you bring into the library? And is there a vetting process with that, or how does that work? I'm not familiar with it.
Absolutely. We have what we call a collection development policy, and that explains that we look at different reviews of the books, what kind of things we're hearing in the media, and what kind of requests that we're getting in. So that's all included in that collection development policy. And so definitely we're considering a lot of different things when we're bringing in those books.
So it's not just whatever happens, each book is kind of looked at and make sure
we're thinking through, we're looking at the different people that might serve, and looking at our community and trying to gauge appropriately what people would like to be reading and what they're interested in. Yes, definitely.
Okay, that sounds good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Just a quick question. 7 and 8 years ago, I was on the library board.
Yes.
And the budgeting process back then was best described as primitive. And they didn't have this 1.1 or $1.6 million worth of carryover funds. Do you have plans for that?
Absolutely, we do absolutely have plans for that. So the first step for us is to take a look at, to do a needs analysis and to look at what we need in our community. Our library service area is the entire county. So, and we have facilities in Simla, so all the way out in Simla. So we're gonna take a look at the whole county and see what we need. The plan all along has been to renovate, to expand the library in Elizabeth. And I don't want to say that is going to happen right off the bat, because I haven't seen an analysis of our entire community. So, I mean, that's the kind of thought process that we're heading towards, but I can't say until we see the results of, what's going on in the county that we can really make that decision.
At my age, my memory isn't very good, but as I recall, of that building that's in Elizabeth, less than half of it was actually being utilized back then. Is it similar to that now?
Absolutely, yes. So there's a huge warehouse area in the back that we are not currently able to use because it doesn't meet the standards for the fire code. So, people have talked about different things for that space in the back. But at this point, we are not able to use it for anything more than storage. So that is definitely part of this whole decision as we, think about the future and look at what the needs are in the community and plan for those needs. Absolutely. Sure. Oh, and by the way, our budgeting is a lot better now. We actually have a real accountant that's helping us with that, so a CPA.
We have watched that over the years, and it's appreciated.
Right.
Actually, I thought the depreciation of books was an interesting.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? I did not know that.
Some of the oldest books
Yes.
ever written have the greatest value, but
Yes.
I guess CPAs look at things differently. And I do appreciate the, your comments on the needs analysis, as we grow in different areas of the counties, and I know that there's a lot of partnership and service between different library districts, so who's serving who.
Right, exactly.
I did just, in your experience, I know typically the library materials have been 10% or less in the spending, and I think that's, you look at a library, I think that's going to be a bigger expense, but is that typical, or it's been typical for this district?
I mean, in any organization, your personnel costs are going to be the highest, obviously, but, so, for materials, I can actually, you know what, why don't I can do a little study for you, if you're interested.
Yeah, I'd just be curious,
I mean, I'm a librarian, I love that kind of stuff, so I'd be happy to.
Is an indication of a stagnant.
Sure, yeah,
spending money.
yeah.
Primary purpose of the library, or is that
Yeah.
typical? And I understand personal utilities, all the other pieces are always bigger expenses that people don't recognize, but it's just been a curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let me get back with you on that. That would be fun.
Certainly, Colorado is unique, and library districts are unique in that we have this statutory reporting requirement and, authorities to appoint or reject nominees. But it's just a weird lash up, but I think we've found a way to work through it. So I do appreciate the report. I know a little later today under action, we're considering the nomination of Ruth Ann, yeah. So,
All right, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
See you next year at least.
Excuse me, commissioners. I just wanted to let you know we're having some network issues.
okay, in terms of,
The feed on the website. So everything on my end is working, but the website is not
okay,
live streaming right now.
okay. Do you believe we're recording, or?
We are recording.
All right, thanks. No, appreciate the update, thank you. So, onward to the Economic Development Annual Report. Mark, and your faithful sidekick.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, commissioners, elected officials, staff, citizens. I'm Mark Denreader, Director of Community and Economic Development, and yes, I have Eric with me today.
Sure. Eric Larson, I'm the part-time project manager in economic development.
All right, thanks.
So I'm going to cover what we did in 2022 and what lies ahead. Eric will talk about the economic snapshot of our county, so he'll go into some of the numbers. First off, in the work that we do in economic development, we're always cognizant of our county's guiding documents. So obviously we have the comprehensive plan and the the strategic plan. And both of those plans highlight the importance of economic development. We as a department certainly we're charged with aligning with those goals and objectives in these plans. Going over last year, 2022, speaking of plans, we did two of them. We did the housing needs assessment and also the economic development strategic plan. We have presented the detailed findings of both those plans to you, the board, in previous meetings, as you're well aware, over the past 2 months. It is noteworthy again that the housing needs assessment was partially grant funded. Both plans are on the economic development website. That's elbertcountyworks.com. Improving the way we communicate with the public is certainly always top of mind, as well with our partners. So we have the economic development website. We also have LinkedIn now, a specific LinkedIn page for economic development. And we also were able to assist CDS with the Community Development Projects Map. That is a map, a tool that the public can view any current development projects in the unincorporated parts of Elbert County. Networking, that's another thing that we're constantly doing. It's an obvious thing in our world of economic development, and we certainly enjoy representing Elbert County on boards and committees. This is an important aspect of what we did in 2022. We serve on the ECOG board, the East Central Council of Governments, also Pro 15, also on a subcommittee for the Economic Development Council of Colorado. We also, of course, have our Economic Development Council for Elbert County, and we had our first full year of that council up and running again, and they really like to thank that council for the work that they did with the Housing Needs Assessment and the Economic Development Strategic Plan in the way of feedback and input and review of those plans. And then we also launched a Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee last year, had one meeting, and we have had our first meeting already in January of this year. So it's great to have key stakeholders engaged in discussions regarding open space. We also evaluate and recommend policy adjustments. Another thing we do, we wear lots of hats in economic development, so we did update the policy for the sale and transfer of county-owned property. And before I kick it over to Eric to talk about some of the numbers, the data, there were a few development projects in the county that I'm sure you all have seen driving around. Burnco, that's the concrete batch plant. They had their groundbreaking ceremony this past summer, and they're coming out of the ground just 2 miles west here on State Highway 86. And then if you're in Elizabeth, the Wild Point Ranch Marketplace, you'll see a few different new businesses there. There were 4, in fact, that went through the site development plan process here at the county. That was McDonald's, Breaks Plus, Ziggy's Coffee, and Anna's Car and Dog Wash. Eric, the floor is yours, sir. Okay.
Morning, gentlemen. Sort of as the data guy, I want to step back into the value we actually ended up getting out of both the housing needs assessment and avoiding data overload with the economic development strategic plan. Those were important to me. I think we understand who we are as a county on the big side, but getting that high fidelity data on the housing side was certainly is going to be valuable for us moving forward. So as the data guy, I just want to point out that those were 2 big wins from my perspective. Not going to lie to you, 2022, not a good year for data. There's still an awful lot of churn coming out of post-COVID. The Census 2020 stuff is not entirely reliable, especially in rural places. That census data, I mean, when we talk about growth of the United States population, the census data is remarkably good. It's a big sample. You can get lots of information out of it. When it gets down into something the size of a census tract, that census data is not always the best, especially as you start getting down to something like, what does the age cohort 65 to 69 look like? Well, it's a statistical sample. And if it doesn't start with really good high-level data, it's not entirely accurate. The plus minus on the margin of error starts to fall apart very quickly. So that said, I will say that we've learned a couple of lessons this year. We are working a lot more with the state demographer's office data rather than the high-level census kind of stuff that just doesn't quite get down to the granularity that we need it to. Again, there's still a lot of post-COVID adjustments going on in the economy. I would sort of caution that maybe a lot of the post-COVID stuff, the strong recovery that we saw, kind of the bounce back that we saw coming out of COVID, jobs come back, paychecks come back, all that kind of stuff, is now going to be replaced by a new sort of era where Now we're dealing with inflation, we're dealing with interest rates, we're dealing with labor market and the churn in the labor market, and a lot of job mobility kind of things. People can work from different places. I mean, I'm an example of a hybrid worker. Some days I work from home, some days I work out here. And so we're still watching a lot of that big picture in the economy and how it's going to affect us. As far as our general, kind of the general overview of the economy here in the county, I think like a lot of our key performance indicators are still growing and still strong. We've got job growth. People are, the number of jobs here in the county is still improving, and it's starting to catch up just a little bit with the number of employees, with the working age population and the workforce. And so we're starting to see some of that. Again, that sort of, where people are working versus where they're going to work is a remarkably, it's a very precise measurement. And so some of that data that still exists from 2019, where people are working, are they working in the county, or are they live in the county and work outside the county? Do they live outside the county and work inside the county? That high fidelity data just isn't quite there yet. And the 2020 census didn't help us with that. So we'll continue to watch and see how that evolves. On spending, which is, really what taxable sales, it continues to increase here in the county. One of the big things on the spending is the inflation adjustments, and really watching to make sure that we understand, we're not just assuming that $6 million less in spending or $4 million less in spending, how that it actually affects people's pocketbooks, or, and where that's actually coming from. We're still watching to see how that's working. But again, year-on-year growth in spending here in the county still continues. And then, our ever popular, property ratio, the commercial or the residential, the commercial and industrial property, we did see a minor increase in that again this year. And I think, as Mark indicated, you can drive down 86, you can drive and see where some of that commercial development is starting to happen and having that effect on changing that ratio. So that's a good positive trend for us. The other, again, as we kind of crunch through the data, wage growth, I was concerned at first glance when I saw the wage growth kind of stuff. We've kind of hovered around 1,000 for a couple of cycles. Well, when I look back in the historical data, we are getting increasing wage growth, and again, inflation matters. We're keeping the wage growth in the county is keeping ahead of inflation. That's a good thing. Another one of the interesting things was the age demographics and what that can tell us about what's going on in the county. We've talked in the past about about that sort of baby boomer cohort moving through and what they're going to need. Well, we know that they're going to need health care. So we're looking at options for how to make that, how to focus on that as part of our economic development strategies. But interestingly, coming in behind that is the next wave, the millennials. And they're the folks in their 30s, right on the bottom edge of 40 now. And you know what they need? They need childcare. They're in the age where now both parents are working. They need a place for their kids to be. That's going to affect schools. That's going to affect childcare. So we can make some predictions based on that age demographic kind of trend that's moving through the county. And also interesting in the data this year is there is an increasing growing. I think based on sort of that first glance at all the data and wondering what it actually means for us, I think we are starting to see some increasing diversity in the workforce. The median income dropped down just a little bit. It's an estimate. In the education, the post high school degrees number actually dropped a little bit. Those are not necessarily bad things. That means we are attracting a portion of the population that is looking for, not $1 million on 10 acres, but are looking at $500,000 on 5,000 square feet. So we're starting to see some of that attracting, and again, a plumber doesn't have to have a college degree, so that doesn't start to show up in the data. And again, kind of broad trends in the American population, college degrees aren't necessarily the measure of success or the indicator for future success that they used to be. Technical degrees technical qualifications still matter. So I think in the data, we're starting to see a little bit of diversity coming in the workforce, coming into the county, and that's actually a pretty good thing. That means that we've got, plumbers, that we've got teachers, that we've got folks who are within our working population who are making Elbert County their home. And as I said in the report, it's no longer the commuters into Denver Tech Center and into downtown. They are going to jobs in Parker, they are going to jobs in Aurora, and some of those folks are actually starting to come out here too. So there's all really good positive trends. And I'll just close on this one, that as far as kind of looking forward into 2023, and I'm going to steal just a little bit of Mark's thunder on this one, is I really look forward to doing more outreach to our local businesses and learning more about our local businesses this year. We've avoided, not necessarily avoided, it just hasn't been a priority in the past. And already yesterday I had a great conversation with a couple of business owners and really look forward to those conversations moving forward. So I'll turn it back to Mark to close.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. So this year, we're taking both of those plans, the Housing Needs Assessment and the Economic Development Strategic Plan that we conducted last year, and we're really looking forward to executing the findings of those plans. It's going to determine based on, what makes sense for us here in the county. With the Housing Needs Assessment, we definitely take things out of that, like continuing to improve, obviously, our planning and building processes. We'll certainly look at our land use regulations and also look at some of the densities and ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And with respect to the Economic Development Strategic Plan, very excited to focus on the recruitment piece of businesses, looking at medical, childcare, truck stop, light industrial manufacturing, lodging, lots of opportunities. This year, we're also going to be doing 2 new plans. One is going to be quite the task, a water master plan. Looking forward to that, also seeking some grant funding for that plan. And then we'll also be doing a parks, trails, and open space plan later in the year. So we'll run 2 plans concurrently. The hope is they will be successful. That's the goal, just like we did this past year, we're doing those 2 plans simultaneously. And as Eric mentioned, we are looking forward to that business outreach element, that direct contact with our local businesses, extremely important, one of the major aspects of economic development, so we'll get into that this year. That concludes our report, Commissioners. Any comments, questions for us?
Thank you.
I just got kind of a generalized comment, and how long have you been with us now, 2 years?
2 years, sir, yes.
Yes, well, about when Chris and I were first sworn in, we looked at the ratio of assessed values between commercial or non-residential, and I think it was about 90%, 10% or something thereabouts.
Yeah.
And we asked, we set up the economic development zone and then a department head to run it. And my question is, and when we first interviewed you, we said, this has probably got about a 2-year lead time before we can initiate this project and have positive outcomes. That's the reason I asked how long. Is the 2 years now starting to
yes.
to rise up?
We're right there, just right at the edge of the breakout is the way I see it. We laid the foundation these past 2 years, built the relationships, got our name out there, if you will, and we're poised to see more development. A lot of it's going to just happen organically, but also more of it will happen with what we do and our actions in terms of our executable tasks. So very, very enthusiastic.
What are those important actions?
Yes, primarily there's really 3 things related especially to our Economic Development Strategic Plan. And one, like I mentioned previous, that is the targeted recruitment of businesses, okay? So that is gonna tie directly into that 10%, 90% imbalance ratio of property tax collection on the commercial versus the residential side. Also, related to the Economic Development Strategic Plan relates to just that building our rural identity and really branding who we are and getting a really strong sense of what that is and incorporating that into our activities. And then third, already mentioned, is that business outreach, because that is how we can help support and possibly expand existing businesses. And again, that falls right into that same category of increasing our commercial industrial base. Eric, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay, thank you.
I just appreciate you guys. Your passion shows. I appreciate it. Attention to detail and working hard. We really appreciate it.
I just wanted to say, I think I don't think we can underestimate the value of the housing needs assessment. I mean, certainly we have folks that want to build, but to be able to engage on what needs to be built is tremendously important. I like seeing the kind of slow but steady job growth. Eric, as you said, reduction in median income is not a bad thing, because it shows that we're likely bringing in folks that are living and working here versus making a lot of money elsewhere, and just the business recruitment. I mean, we're not a self-sufficient county. I mean, if we can provide our own goods and services and keep our dollars circulating in the county versus being spent elsewhere, the net effect is huge. So keep doing what you're doing. It's good stuff. Certainly the big ticket item this year obviously is going to be the water master plan, and the outreach on that publicly has got to be pervasive. I mean, everybody does have an opinion. A lot of people do have facts, but this is one that we've had some kind of guiding principles, and we want to conserve what we have. But I think getting down to an actual plan that we can execute and hang requirements on as the county develops is incredibly important. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. Appreciate your support, and we appreciate the opportunity to do what we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our last discussion item was just on our 2024 budget goals. I mean, I know we're talking about our 21 audit in a little bit, and our in 23 and closing out 22. But we got to talk about 24 as well. So, Dallas.
Just to let everybody know, the budget process in the county never stops. It continues. And so we're already looking at the development of the 2024 budget. Our budget steering committee had a first meeting last week, primarily to go over last year's commissioner's budget goals and to see what we wanted to adjust or keep with that. So that will be something that will be presented here before the next meeting or two formally. It gives a guideline and pathway to all the elected and department heads on developing the budget. The budget steering committee also works as far as aligning with the strategic plan, some measurable goals along with that, and also prioritizing some of the major projects throughout the county. And so we're off and running, looking at developing in that 2024 budget.
Much appreciated. And that budget steering committee is pretty widely represented across the county. Dallas was our elected member, I think, last year when we established. Now the commissioner member, Sherry, has joined as treasurer in that effort. Having the county manager involved, also very important. But pretty much a small group that can keep things moving forward, but at the same time communicate broadly across the county to make sure that we are taking care of folks' needs. So that unless you have something? No. Okay, that would concluded our discussion items. We want to move on to action, and we had moved forward, and I think we do have Matthew on. Are we linked in? Okay, yeah, we'll take a brief recess while technology catches up with reality here.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue. Please enter the meeting password followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are 2 participants in the meeting. You have been added to the waiting room. You cannot talk.
Good morning.
Good morning, Matthew. I guess we're connected, so it's 9:52. We'll come out of recess. Technology has caught up with reality. So
Perfect. Thank you. I will screen share right now and make sure you guys can see. Are you able to see my screen currently?
we are. Thank you. So,
Yep. Okay. I'll be ready when you tell me.
alrighty. This is the conclusion of a lengthy marathon. I think as we've discussed several times, we've had a little bit of a struggle, not with the numbers, but with the people and timing over this, the 2021 audit. For about a month or so before the audit generally would have been completed in June, our contracted consultant that actually puts together our financials for audit was hospitalized and then had somewhat limited availability moving forward for that. County manager departing in July, and then during the period of extension to complete the audit, and our finance manager departing in, I believe it was early August, mid-August, and then availability on the auditor's side to work us back in amongst their other clients. Certainly delayed things, but I'm glad that we've gotten to where we are today, and we can truly close the books on 21 and get on with closing the books on 22. So with that, Matthew, I'd turn it over to you, and if you could take us through the findings in your report, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I will definitely do that. Thank you very much, Commissioner Richardson. I'm going to walk you through our viewpoints document. It includes kind of our auditor required communications, and I'll kind of talk about the audit results. If there's any questions, don't hesitate to stop me, but I'll walk you through that. So auditor communications, qualitative aspects of accounting practices. So as Commissioner Richardson has talked about, your management team, including your consultants, is responsible for the selection and use of appropriate accounting policies. Those accounting policies are talked about in footnote 2 of the financial statements, which I'll walk you through at a high level. We did go through the financial statements in the single audit, which is your federal funds audit, in detail during the study session just a couple days ago, so I won't go quite into that detail, but I don't want to shortchange as far as talking about the things that we should talk about with regard to the 2021 audit. There were no new accounting practices or policies that we would need to adopt. Now that will change for 22 in the year's future, which I'll hit on a little bit later. No transactions lacked authoritative guidance. There were no things that were recorded out of period, and there was really nothing unusual that we need to note to you. Inherent in every set of financial statements is accounting estimates. So the most significant estimate in the county's financial statements is management's estimate of depreciation. So depreciation is how we charge through the use of mostly capital assets, so equipment, buildings as expense. And so while we generally have a good idea of how long a piece of equipment, such as a vehicle or a building, might last, it is an estimate, so it's not an exact science. Also want to highlight several significant disclosures that I'll highlight where they're located in the financial statements. Footnote 3 talks about the cash and investments that the county holds. Footnote 4 talks about the capital assets the county holds. Footnote 5 talks about the long-term obligations that the county has. And then footnote 9 talks about the significant commitments and contingencies. And then note 15 has information regarding subsequent events, which really nothing huge in subsequent events, but I always like to highlight those out. As part of the audit process, we do have to make you aware of any corrected and uncorrected misstatements. So what do I mean when I say uncorrected misstatements? They're small differences in things that we notice throughout the audit process that they're not materially misstating the financial statements. We do have to aggregate those throughout the audit process and present those to management and make sure that they would not materially impact the portrayal of the financial results for 2021. And so that's summarized, and we presented those to management, and they agreed that they did not materially misstate the financial statements if we did not book those. And so here's the tables that kind of summarize what those are. Very small differences when you're looking at a county of multiple millions of dollars. Other things I should let you know about. The really only big thing I would talk about is and Commissioner Richardson talked about it a little bit. We've had some delays in completing our audit just due to the turnover in management, accounting, and finance functions, as well as the personal absences that were resulting from that. I would anticipate us getting back on calendar going forward. We really had no disagreements with management. I would say your management team, including the commissioners, are always very good to work with. They're always trying to do things right and want to do things the best they can. And so it just really came down to sometimes you have those years where you have some transition going on and it goes out a little farther than you want, but your management team is trying to do things right. And it's just really want to explain why the audit process is where it is. This talks about what else is included in your financial statements, which is really your transmittal letter and your budget to actual information. I touched on it a little bit. So the Governmental Accounting Standards Board has been rather busy, especially the last several years, but really, quite frankly, since I entered the public or accounting profession 15 plus years ago. So we were at roughly GASB, I think like 40-ish when I came in, and we're well over 100 at this point. So they're clipping away at a lot of standards. So the one that I really want to point out that we'll need to implement for the 2022 year, which I know the county has already started, is the leasing standards. So if those of you who have taken accounting classes in your past, you might have remembered the concept of a capital lease and operating lease, and some of that goes on your balance sheet and some of that does not. Well, this statement, which there's a kind of I would call it a brother or sister statement at the financial accounting, which is what private companies follow. GASB and FASB both issued standards whereby things that used to be treated with or an operating lease where it would not show up as a liability on your balance sheet will now show up as your liability. It would be a right-to-use asset and a right-to-use liability. So we're going through and do the analysis as part of the 2022 audit and make sure all those correct liabilities. It also will impact how the capital leases that the county has are presented as well, because some of that terminology that was historically used is not going to be used going forward. So it won't be a gigantic lift, but it's something that we'll have some work to do. And then there's a good amount of other standards having to do with replacing a LIBOR. The one I would also like to highlight, because we're seeing it more and more, is the GASB 94, which is the public-private partnerships and the public-public partnerships. We're seeing more and more governmental entities enter into these public-private partnerships and these public-public partnerships in order to best serve their services to their communities. And so there's some guidance on some of the accounting considerations with regard to that, as well as availability payment arrangements, whereby if a service is contracted like to a third party and they're paid based on the availability of something being operational, that would drive how that would be accounted for. And then really the other one I should point out that most people probably will have some is the subscription-based information technology arrangements, or a SPITA. It's kind of like leases in that you're leasing the IT technology from an entity, and so similar to leasing standard, a liability would be booked and an asset would be booked for any of that IT type of things that would not have fallen under the leases standard. GASB went and said, well, it seems like a lot of entities are doing these IT type of arrangements, and so we need to issue some guidance on how we're going to account for that going forward. And then I won't hit on any of these others, but as you can see, 2 pages of GASB standards. Here's some of the adjusting journal entries that were booked, and then as part of the audit process, management did sign a representation letter. So I'm going to stop share of this, and I'm going to switch over to share of the actual financial statements. Any questions on that part of the presentation?
None from this side. Thank you.
Okay, so I will walk you through a couple highlights because I think there's a couple important things I want to point out. So here's your financial statements. There's your transmittal letter there. For those of you that aren't familiar with governmental financial statements, or really any financial statements, I'll kind of point out some highlights. But the one thing I do want to point out from our side is the ever important opinion. So we did issue an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements of the county. You probably are thinking, if you've seen these in the past, it does look a little different. We as auditors had to follow some new standards for these 2021 audits. So your opinion used to be buried in the middle of your auditor report letter, and now it's kind of the first paragraph there. So it's important to point that out and just make you understand you did get an unmodified or clean opinion. And then if we go through, following the auditor's report is your management discussion analysis. It's just like it sounds. It's management's discussion and analysis of what went on for the year. It's really a great high-level view of what the county had going on for 2021. So if you're just starting the financial statements, a good place to start, because once you really start digging in the financials, there's quite a bit of technical nature in there. Behind your management discussion and analysis is your full accrual financial statements, so your governmental activities, and so this has all of the assets and all of the liabilities of the county recorded here. So the biggest difference between this and what is your fund accounting that most governments spend most of their time in, which is your budgetary basis, is your capital assets are capitalized, i.e. your buildings, equipment, any of your other stuff, and then your long-term liabilities such as debt show up there. So for the year, the county ended with a positive net position of $96 million. Of that, about 65 million is tied up in capital asset type of things, your roads, your buildings, your equipment, and so on. So that's important to point out. For the year, the county had an increase in net position from 89 million to 96 million, of about 6.5 million. And then behind your governmental activities is your governmental fund financial statement. So you have your general fund, your road and bridge, your human services, and sales and use tax. Won't go through those in detail because they really all feed up into that government wide. And here's a reconciliation that gets you from the fund reporting to the government wide reporting. It kind of shows like how do we get from what our change in general fund all the way up to governmental funds or your governmental activities is. And then there's your special revenue funds, statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for those governmental funds. Behind that is a reconciliation to show how you get to from your governmental fund change in net position, or change in fund balance, to your government-wide change in net position. And then behind here is your fiduciary activities. The county operates in a fiduciary manner with regard to a couple different things. The county is responsible for collecting property tax and remitting those property taxes to the different towns or special districts within the county. So Elbert County collects all property taxes, and then they remit it out to your different library districts, your fire districts, water districts, and so on. And so that activity is accounted for in your fiduciary activities because you're operating in a fiduciary manner, because it's not money that the county proper gets to retain for its own uses. It's money that is collected and remitted out to other people. And then you also have your custodial treasurer's fund, and then a couple other custodial funds that are not real large, but you're also operating in a fiduciary manner. And then here's a kind of an income statement presentation of the activity for fiduciary activities for 21. Behind the base financial statements are about 20 pages of footnotes. The footnotes just provide a lot of context on how do we value assets, how do we value our liabilities, what is the makeup of our cash and investments. So you have Colo Trust, you have Colo Trust Edge, how much of your cash is restricted, your capital asset footnote, your long-term obligations, which is your general obligation debts, your leases, your direct placement debts, and so on. So a lot of information about when debts are due, and then the capital lease obligations of the county, a little bit of information about how your net position is calculated. Let's see, tiny bit of information about commitments and contingencies. And then on note 15, we just disclosed that the county did receive its second half of the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds in 2022. So you got your first half in 2021, which will lead me into the single audit very well. But you got the second half in 2022. Any questions on the financial statements before I talk about the single audit results?
Nothing on this end, Matthew.
Okay. I'm hoping you're seeing the single audit.
We are.
It looks like you are, so I'll keep going. So because the county receives and expends more than $750,000 of federal funds, the county gets to do kind of a secondary audit, which is a federal funds audit. Historically, this has covered different programs, mostly in the human services area. But last year, because the county did receive and expend your fiscal recovery funds, we did audit the fiscal recovery fund as a major program. And so we did look at that, and we issued a couple different opinions. So we first issued an opinion over the internal control over financial reporting in compliance with governmental auditing standards. And we did issue a finding with regard to this, which I'll talk about here in just a second. We also issued an opinion on the your uniform guidance audit, or how did we spend the federal money with regard to the fiscal recovery funds. And so we did issue a couple different findings with regard to the federal money spending as well. And I'll talk about that in detail as I go forward in the thing. Here's your schedule of expenditure of federal awards. So it kind of shows where did the county spend all of its different money, like what programs did the county run. Some of them are programs that are run in partnership with the state, and other ones are things that the county does on its own. So as I mentioned, we did audit the fiscal recovery funds. So here's the summary of the audit results. So we did issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. We did issue a material weakness with regard to the financial reporting. I should really kind of walk you through what is a material weakness, what is a significant deficiency, and what is a deficiency. A deficiency is really just a weakness in internal control that we would like to see improved. A significant deficiency is something that's larger in magnitude than a deficiency, something that is large enough in magnitude that we would want to let governance know about that. And then a material weakness is really a weakness in internal control that is such large in magnitude that we do not feel comfortable that a material misstatement would not be prevented or detected without somebody else outside the organization, i.e. your auditors, finding it. So we as your auditors are prohibited from being part of your internal control process. We're there to check the work at the end and tell you what we see, but we can't be your control to make sure material misstatements. And so some of the turnover in the team, as well as the challenges with some extended absences, I would say likely contributed to some of this as far as the material weakness over financial reporting. I'll walk you through the results of that. And then we also did issue a material weakness over the federal awards. So going forward, you would be considered a high-risk auditee because you did get a material weakness over financial reporting and a material weakness over the federal awards. What does that mean? We'll need to audit enough to get a 40% coverage of the CFA. It depends on how the spending goes this year, but that could mean that we would still only have one program to look at because the fiscal recovery funds is a very large percentage of the overall CFA if you look at it. If we go back to the CFA, you had about $4.4 million in federal expenditures, and the fiscal recovery funds accounted for about 2.7 of it. So it's, quite a bit of it, and that's why it may not be as big a deal. I know nobody ever likes getting the check of not being a low-risk auditee, but I did want to point that out. So here's the finding on internal control over financial reporting. Like I talked about, had a lot of turnover. The information that we were provided, there was a little bit back and forth and some errors that we felt should have been caught at the county or the county staff and management level, and things that we should not be, as your auditors, having to find. And so we did issue a material weakness. There was not like one single large transaction. I would say it was probably an aggregation of several smaller transactions and several smaller things that once we kind of looked at it together, we're like, yeah, it's a bunch of small and medium equals large, or you can sometimes have one large item. And so I'd like to point that out. With regard to the federal awards finding, we did find that the county did ask for reimbursement under 2 different federal programs for some of the money that was coded under the fiscal recovery fund. The county did correct it after we alerted to them and found replacement expenditures to cover the expenditures. But as I mentioned earlier, we're prohibited from being part of your internal control. Additionally, we noted that some of the time cards that supported the expenditures were not being signed off on by their immediate supervisors. You did have the county manager looking at the stuff overall, but once we looked at kind of the double coding of the expenditures as well as the time cards not being approved, we did issue a material weakness on the fiscal recovery funds. Lastly, we did issue a material weakness over this preparation of the schedule of expenditure of federal awards. When we received the proposed final CFA from management / the consulting team, we did note that there were several balances that had not been updated from prior years, and so we did issue material weakness because the problem being is if we had relied on that and not corrected it, we could have inappropriately selected the wrong major program and audited wrong and just had a kind of a busted audit with regard to the audit, and so that's why we did issue a material weakness. And then lastly, follow up on a last year finding, or a couple year ago finding, we had been issuing a significant deficiency over the foster care program, and we're happy to report that corrective action has been taken. Speaking of corrective action plans, management / the Board of County Commissioners has provided us with their corrective action plans for each of the 3 material weaknesses that we did issue. It's really, if I could summarize it in just a couple words, the county is looking at the composition of the accounting and finance functions and team and making sure that they rewrite positions to cover the various areas that they feel need to be covered, and recruiting those people to fill the vacancies that can help fulfill those weaknesses that were noted in the audit process. Any questions or further clarification with regard to the 2021 audit?
Anything on your end? No. Nothing from my compatriots here. I just did want to again thank you for your efforts. And I mean, there was honestly some hand-holding this year, and though you're not part of our control process, it's also comforting that you allowed us to work through those issues and make sure that expenditures were placed in the right places. And certainly your guidance and input as we worked through the corrective action plans was certainly appreciated. Kind of as we roll through on, the increase in net position, for profit business, very important for government. I think it should give folks comfort that we're keeping up on depreciation of those major assets like roads, facilities, the major equipment that we use. Certainly there's been an awful lot of prep work done in terms of identifying the leases that we have out and addressing those issues that we're going to be reporting on this year and those changes and requirements. So kind of looking forward to getting moving on that. I do want to take a moment to truly thank Tiffany Herms, who couldn't be here Oh, she could be here. She just was behind somebody, but thank you, Tiffany, for all your work in kind of wrangling the few people we had left and providing the one person standing with specific financial expertise in the county as we finish this up. So I would say just for the public, the final reports were uploaded to the website. We'll get the report to management up as soon as we can after the fact here. And I would, at this point, just open up to if there is any public comment or questions for the auditor while we have them. Not seeing any. So with that, Matthew, I do appreciate your work on 21. When do we get started on 22?
We'll be in contact. I really appreciate everybody's hard work down there, and thank you to Tiffany and really all departments of the county. We do touch most departments of the county at some part throughout the audit process. So it's a team effort down there. And yes, while we can't be your control, we're there to be your partner and help where we can and help point out best practices and things that our management can consider and go forward. So looking forward to getting that 21 or 22 audit started and getting it done so that we can move on to bigger and better things. So.
All righty. Well, thank you very much. So.
Thank you. Yeah. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. You too. All right. With that, I guess just kind of pro forma, since we can't change an audit report, but I would accept a motion to accepted the audit report.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the material weaknesses, we have put together a correction plan going forward. So hopefully we don't see these problems again. We've had issues like this in the past, and over time that they've been fixed. So, and the amount of money in each one of those material weaknesses was relatively small and proportionate to the total expenditures. With that in mind, I would like to move that we approve the 2021 Reuben Brown audit report and accept it as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to accept the audit reports. Any further discussion? Not for me. Okay. Then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. All righty. Moving on to consideration of the January 25th, 2023 minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we approve the minutes from the January 25th, 2023 meeting as presented and dispense with the reading of those minutes.
Second.
The motion and a second to approve the minutes of the January 25th, 2023 meeting and dispense with the reading. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. All righty. The next we have is consideration of an appointment to the library board. I would, the nomination of Ruth Ann Stricker was received in January from the current board president, Patty Lampman. So I'd accept a motion to approve the nominee, and then we'll have some discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the appointment of Ms. Ruth Ann Stricker to the library board.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I know we have some reps from the library. Is there anything you'd like to add to the nomination? Or no, it seemed it's always good to have folks volunteer for these important positions in the community. So if there's no discussion up here.
I would just comment, Ruth Ann was an election judge for us this past year. Did a good job, competent, diligent in her work. I had the opportunity to travel the county a little bit, pick up ballots with her at our drop boxes, and found her to be pleasant. And as Rhonda always says, one of the main criteria is that you play nice in the sandbox, and Ruth Ann did that. So glad that she's going to be part of the program over there.
Cool. So with that, accept, I guess we have a motion and a second, and we've had discussion. So all in favor of appointing the nominee, Ruth Ann Stricker, to the library board, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. And then we'll get you a copy of the minutes reflecting the appointment after our next meeting. Okay. So moving on, another appointment of County Manager Sean Fletcher as the budget officer for the county. This is a statutorily required position, generally held by the county manager, and it's good to have it back in the lap of the county manager. So I'd ask you to accept the nomination, but we really don't give you a choice. So. No, I would like to say, I mean, as part of the search and criteria we were looking for when selecting a new county manager was somebody that did have a strong financial background, and Sean does have that. So that was a very important aspect of that hire. So I accept a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Sean Fletcher as the Chief Budget Officer for the county.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
You can see with the audit report in that there's some things that we need to pay attention to in these budget officer requirements, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor of appointing Sean Fletcher as County Budget Officer, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. The next is consideration of a resolution appointing a referee for the 2023 Board of Equalization. This is something we've done regularly for the last several years, as our assessor's office now has licensed appraisers. It seemed odd that the commissioners would be double checking their work, so hiring a referee that has an extensive and professional background to consider any appeals and provide us recommendations has certainly seemed like the right thing to do, and I think it's worked well for the county. So.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Resolution 23- to be determined, resolution appointing referees for the 2023 County Board of Equalization.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Any other discussion? Nope. Any public comment? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of approving the resolution 23 to be determined regarding appointing of a referee for Board of Equalization, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. And then the final action item we have today is consideration of an updated resolution authorizing the county clerk to enter into IGAs and MOUs for any 2023 elections. I'd accept a motion. Whoop.
Yeah, I see that in here.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 23-06A, a resolution authorizing the Elbert County Clerk to sign election IGA and MOU agreements and accept awarded grants.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second of the corrected resolution. Any comment or discussion? No. No. I know we kind of discussed it when we did the initial, just it makes the process a little simpler for the clerk to be able to engage directly with those they're supporting elections for versus having to wait on the timeline to get it before us, because often the people we're coordinating with wait to the last minute and we don't have a board meeting scheduled. So any public comment on this? Okay, seeing none, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Alrighty. Moving on to board planning for our next meeting. Will be the fourth Wednesday of this month. Probably be time to get an update from facilities on the progress of the Public Works facility. We've got some other general housekeeping items probably coming up. Do we have anything specific that you'd like to hear from?
Hopefully we can have the budget commissioner goals.
Yes, yeah, and the commissioner's budget goals for 24, and then I understand that the OEM manager has some mitigation plans he probably wants to discuss, or I'm not sure if he'll have them ready for discussion, but likely for at least staff reports to tee up that process. I guess that'll get us going. That's all the business we have this morning. In the afternoon at 1 p.m. at this location, we've got a few land use items that we'll be considering or acting on. The first is a continuation of Spring Valley Ranch filing number 9. We had progressed that hearing through staff and applicant application and presentation, public comment, and we had continued because there was still some work being done on the subdivision improvement agreement that was part of that filing. That's been completed, so we'll discuss that this afternoon and proceed to a vote and finish that hearing. The Independence amendment to their PUD and some Metropolitan District actions, that's not a hearing, it's really just a vote to set a meeting in the future where that hearing will be held. It's one of the specifics that is required of when you're considering special district service plans. And then finally was just a request from Simla to waive a annex impact report for some action they're taking to bring a parcel into the town of Simla. So really that's what we've got going on at 1. The time is now 10:26. We're in recess and we'll reconvene here after lunch. Thanks.